What is up, chefs, foodies, and students? Welcome to Everybody Knows. I'm Anders. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Today, we are talking about the theory of the universal aroma wheel itself, specifically about the taxonomy and organization of so many food aromas. This one is a doozy. Let's have a quick look at our universal aroma wheel. To recap the basics as covered in the How to Use video, larger categories are in the middle, smaller subcategories go outwards from there, and finally on the outermost ring we arrive at specific aroma identifiers or ingredients. For example, if we are searching for dark chocolate out of all these categories, we're actually going to start off in the earthy category. As we look closer, our options, the best fitted one would be floral. We then see a whole chocolate category, and within the chocolate category we see dark chocolate. The parameters of this design task are to organize all or most of the food aromas in a contiguous one-dimensional spectrum using nesting categories to provide more context or rationale for the order. Here are the rules or order of my organization. The main categories should have some kind of gut check or as close as possible. This is true for some of the main categories much more than others, but the idea is that for a category like marine, the gut check is this came from the ocean. It's just something that is kind of instantaneous and you know it. It is clearer for some categories more than others, and some categories do have gray borders with each other, like where herbs are and where spices are. Number 2, the main categories are somewhat arbitrary, but generally the most common in other aroma wheels. I was a little nervous about whether the main categories were all valid or if I missed one, but I think it actually isn't that big of an issue. The issue was put to rest for me with the descriptor floral. We see floral in almost every single main category. So then, shouldn't there be a main category of floral? Well, if there was, then we would see most of the other main categories appear within the new category of floral. So either way, we have an imperfect system. Number 3. Specific identifiers should be unique. If the differences begin to resemble other identifiers, then they are likely extraneous and likely unneeded. For example, if you have so many kinds of apples on the wheel that you start to differentiate them by thinking, well, this apple should be included because it has a bit of lychee aroma, then you've actually gone outside of the wheel to start to differentiate those apples, which means that that kind of apple isn't actually needed. Since this revelation, the goal has become to use the fewest descriptors as possible for each type of ingredient. This rule has been made since the completion of this first version of the wheel, and so will be incorporated in future versions. Number 4, subcategories should have more than one item within them. Organizationally, it's best to have a new subcategory only if it contains more than one thing. If not, then that singular item can just continue all the way down to an example in the outermost ring. Avocado is a good example of this. So if we look at where avocado is within vegetative, we can see that there's this tiny green sliver right at the edge. And the way that I've distinguished this is it has a descriptor that describes that type of aroma until we get to the outermost ring where we have an actual specific example or identifier. So to sort of amend what I said about having a category for more than one thing, this sort of is self-representing by calling it rich and then having our specific example of avocado. And the reason that I did that was under the assumption that there are other rich vegetative examples out there that I have not included or am not aware of. Design rule number 5 is that subcategories can be based on a number of attributes. Some are based on species, some on geography, some on treatment of an ingredient, some purely on aroma, but ultimately the organization of subcategories should place similar aromas near one another. Similarly, subcategories should be descriptive and aren't limited to certain terms. Even the main categories can reappear in lower categories as secondary descriptors. So those are the design rules that I've been using. And the last thing that I want to note is the idea we mentioned earlier, which is that there is this phenomenon when we reach the outer edge of the wheel that we might begin to exit the outside of the wheel as we compare very similar items or identifiers. The ways that I've thought about it are that once we reach a single product, that product could and sometimes does have its own wheel to explore the intricacies of that product. Or to do so simply requires drawing connections around the outside of this aroma wheel to describe the differences within that specific product. To use the apple example, once we get into just apples and compare them all, we either devise a wheel just for apples and to compare them, or we can start to reach out and around this wheel for descriptors that differentiate the different kinds of apples. That about wraps it up. Here's what I want you to do. Think about the universal aroma wheel and what we talked about. Did my thinking or logic make sense to you? Why or why not? If you would have done things differently, I would love to know what your solutions would look like. What other questions do you have for me? I thrive on your feedback, so please comment any of the answers to those questions below and I will happily read them. I hope this video made sense and got you thinking about this universal aroma wheel. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to join the food aroma nerdery, go ahead and subscribe and you'll see all my latest vids. If you'd like a poster copy or digital copy of the universal aroma wheel I've created, there will be links in the description. Thanks so much. Bye.